any point, it's because I'm just keeping an eye on the waiting room for people coming in. So that'll be why. My name is Catherine Kirk and I'm the RSHE leader with the Lead Equate Teaching School Alliance. And I've been leading on the rollout of the DFE training across the East Midlands. I'm also an advisor for Nottingham City Council and I do work nationally as well. So what we're here today to look at is the new briefing document that's been released by the DFE on the being safe topic for primary. So I'm going to take you through the DFE slides. And what I really want is if you've got any questions as we're going along, do please put them in the chat. Just because there's quite a lot in the slides to go through. And, you know, if there's points of clarity that you need around this aspect or others, then do just please make a note in the chat and we can I can have a look at those. I was just reading Natalie's comment about the Easter break started today. Well done for being here, Natalie. And being able to enjoy the sunshine. Lovely. Hopefully the sunshine will be here for a few more days, so we can all have a bit of an enjoy of the sunshine. My contact details are there as well. I'll get Donna to send out the slides after the session. Now, this is the last of the DFE modules to be released and probably, I guess, one of the most sensitive topics, and that's probably why it's been quite a long time in development. So what we're going to look at is we're going to explore in detail the outcomes in the being safe section of the framework and think about what key content we need to deliver as part of that. And then also signposting to good practice and resources, and giving you an opportunity as well to think about how well you cover this aspect currently and what else you might need to put in place. So just as a quick opener then, just in the chat, if you can quickly type, if you're able to, what skills and knowledge do primary age children need around the, in order to keep safe? So just jot some thoughts down in the chat. What skills and knowledge do they need to keep safe? Hi Sharon, we're just doing a bit of a brainstorm in the chat, just thinking about what skills and knowledge primary age children need to keep safe. Knowledge of body parts, yes, that's a key aspect and often one that's caused a bit of anxiety in terms of which body parts we name and when, and we'll have a look at that. Who keeps them safe, who they can go to, yeah, knowing who to talk to, brilliant, great. Understanding what they feel is right and wrong, yes, and I guess how that makes them feel inside, appropriate touch, emotions, brilliant. Online behaviour, yeah, what's appropriate and inappropriate, who to talk to, what's appropriate behaviour in school, brilliant. So already we can start to see that although this, you know, we're covering that as this is a topic today, it has links to so many other aspects of the broader framework. So the online safety, emotions, the mental well-being, seeking help. So it cross links into those other categories. So it's not necessarily a topic on its own. Any others that have come up? Correct names for body parts, right and wrong, who to talk to. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's move on. So this is what it says in the framework around helping children to be safe. And we're teaching children the knowledge to report and recognise abuse around those different categories. And also thinking about in primary school boundaries and privacy. So ensuring that children know that they have rights over their own bodies. And that really is the focus. So we're building the foundation for that later work in secondary when they go into more depth. So just something about the context for being safe. obviously our first point is that no one should experience abuse, and that, you know, it is wrong and it's against the law, but also that there are positive actions that can be taken and people who can help. And I think that's one of the you know, the really clear messages at primary, is that it's wrong, but also that the people can help. And thinking about how this fits in with our broader work around what is a healthy relationship is really important. So what's healthy, what's unhealthy, whether we're talking about friendships, in families, in the school setting, with any other person that they're interacting with, they're learning about those healthy and unhealthy relationship skills. So this isn't something separate, it's part and parcel of all that. And I guess we also need to think about the broader school context. So obviously we want to be creating a safe environment, first of all, for the learning to take place, but also an environment that reflects what we're teaching in RSHE or PSHE. So we need to be consistently challenging that behaviour that is not healthy, reminding pupils of what's healthy behaviour. But also, you know, supporting children to safe, but also being aware of those that have already experienced harm and how they might feel accessing sessions. So what additional support do we need to put in place for those pupils? And that might be around liaising with parents and carers, or, you know, thinking specifically about the needs of that child. Okay, so primary teaching should introduce concepts of personal boundaries, privacy, both in person and online. So we don't need to, again, take those separately. We're thinking about privacy, and that could be when we're face-to-face with someone, or it could be when we're interacting online. And then what to do if pupils feel unsafe at any point. Now, obviously, some of the topics that are covered in this heading, under this heading, might cause distress to some pupils, particularly if they have prior experience of these things, or, you know, they might not consider that someone might do, you know, touch them inappropriately, for example. So that could cause distress. So we always need to think about that in terms of building that scaffolding of what is a healthy relationship, so they know what a healthy relationship looks like. Again, as I said before, thinking about those pupils that might have experienced harm previously, and, you know, how they can successfully access the learning. And then the timing and sequencing. So again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before around not necessarily having the being safe topic, but, you know, building it in through our other work. So we're not putting it all in one, you know, we're doing 6 weeks on this, building it into some of the other work that we're doing around healthy relationships. Okay, so that just says that there then. So thinking about phasing the delivery and assessing what level of detail to teach when. So for example, we might think about, you know, in reception, year 1, thinking about naming of body parts, which parts are private, and then we build on that maybe around safe, unsafe touch, etc., as they go through school in a sort of varying levels of complexity as they grow. And yeah, we've talked about that, so not delivering in one unbroken thing, and thinking about those links with other aspects. So the caring friendships, respectful relationships, mental well-being, for example. You know, however you've got that set up within your curriculum, how you've got the you know, you might have different topic headings, you might have different themes for each term, but making sure that we feed this through. So in terms of delivering this work safely, the starting point for delivery would always be thinking about your group agreement. So how you're setting that up with the children that you're working with. And we'll have a look in a moment what might be in that group agreement, but really spending time developing that with a class and seeing it as a really important aspect of the teaching. It's not just a sort of, okay, we've got our rules, let's move on. And I know that a lot of you will have classroom rules already, but really making them meaningful for RSHE, PSHE. What additional things might you need in there? what is the purpose of it within those sessions. And, you know, a key point of that is obviously signposting children to where they can get additional support. We talked about reminding children of key concepts. So, you know, the thinking about healthy relationships as a starting point. Liaising with parents and carers, so making sure parents are aware of what's going to be covered and when, so that they can follow up with discussions at home. But also if there are children that have experienced harm, that, you know, it might be, you know, sort of additional work might be needed with that child, or additional considerations of how they can access the learning effectively. Perhaps pre-warning your pastoral or safeguarding staff that you're covering this work, and therefore there might be additional disclosures that come out of it, or children might need support as a result of some of the learning in this topic. So making sure that staff are aware of that when things are being covered and what that might bring up for pupils. Distancing techniques, so, you know, using case studies, stories, puppets, scenarios, things that distance the learning from, distance the subject from individual children. So we're not discussing, you know, individual relationships in the class within this learning. We're thinking about this happened to this person, how might, you know, what would they do? Where would they go for help? And then we can bring it back in terms of who would we go seek help from. But, you know, allowing children to discuss, explore at a distance from their own self, you know, helps to keep children safe. Consider your groupings. So if you normally have children in certain groups, are they the best groups to deliver this work? Is it better for children to be with their friends or those that they find, you know, feel more comfortable with? Do you let children choose where they sit? You know, because often that can help children to feel more comfortable when we're exploring more sensitive topics. And then also, you know, it's at the bottom there, but actually arguably one of the most important is thinking about the well-being of staff delivering, and will any of this content, you know, affect a teacher who's delivering. So being very clear about what's being covered and where do staff go for support if anything that they've been teaching about triggers something for them. So think about first and foremost the well-being of the teacher delivering, and considering what needs they might have, and that'll be part hopefully of your broader well-being strategy for staff. Okay, just quickly then, what needs to be in a group agreement? So when we set our group agreement in RSHE, what sort of things might we have in it? If you just want to type into the chat. Okay, don't share anything personal. Use someone I know. Yep, great. So again, that's that distancing technique. Respect each other. Listen and respect, be respectful. Yep, great. Don't use names. Can you just explain a bit more? That person, Spence. Not sure. What do you mean by that? Respect, listen, respond appropriately. Yep. Any others? And I think like I say, spending time around this is really important, because actually, how do we show respect to others? How do we listen well to others? Yes, great, Sven. So don't share details about other people. Yeah. Don't use names. Yeah. Using someone I know, perhaps, instead of using names. And actually, this could be a rich area of learning for RSHE. You know, how do we show respect? And that links to your relationships curriculum. Time after to talk alone. Yeah, you might have some strategies within class. So, for example, One school I was in had a book where the children could write questions or comments and then identify whether they wanted it answering as a class or an individual chat. Yeah, alternative ways to communicate. Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? Because we might notice a child that looks upset or their body language is changed. So alternative ways that they could communicate, or that we can actually observe that a child might be struggling. Yes, great. Worry monsters in each class, brilliant. So those ways that children can explore that they're, any worries, concerns that they might have. Brilliant. So example ground rules here then: respecting privacy, and that's what you just said around not using names or descriptions, listening to others. It's okay to disagree, but we should also show respect. And that's great in terms of young people being able to voice their opinions without hurting others. No judgment, so exploring beliefs and misunderstanding without being judged. And then everyone has the right to choose not to answer a question, so we don't put anyone on the spot. So again, having maybe an opt-out clause is useful. You might also want to have something around using the terminology that you're going to agree as a class. So for example, if you're going to go through some of the scientific scientific words for body parts, ask children to use those and put that in your group agreement. It hasn't got here around personal questions, which again is a useful one to have in, so that children aren't asking personal questions of you or of others. So yeah, think about your class. Ideally, you would develop it with the class so they have some ownership of it and they're thinking about how we can all behave so we get the most out of the session. And consider with some things you might want to put something in around who would they talk to after the session, and identify who that might be: adults, children in their class if they wanted to talk about the learning, but you don't really want them to then go and teach the younger children what they've been learning, or so it's about who is appropriate to talk to if I want to talk more about this. And yeah, they've used the term trusted adult within this module, and again, a lot of you will probably have already done work on that sort of helping hand type thing, where you identify the adults that you trust. Circles, you could do it with circles with a child at the centre. Who are the people in the nearest circle that they might discuss something with? The next circle. So we're looking at those sort of the people who are closest to us who could help. Okay, so the first section then is around boundaries, privacy, and feeling unsafe. So the first outcome that we've got is knowing what sorts of boundaries are appropriate in friendships with peers and others. So within the framework, we're talking about the characteristics of friendships, family relationships, and relationships with other people. So identifying maybe what they do with different people, how they spend time together, the sorts of things they enjoy doing, what I can't think of the word now, the sort of components of those relationships are. So what makes a happy family and a healthy family? What makes a healthy friendship? So that's our starting point, is respectful and healthy relationships. And then when we're thinking about boundaries, we're thinking about both offline and online. And appropriate boundaries might be around physical contact or personal information. So what was that, a question? Yeah, sorry, yeah, Anna's raised a really good point there. I'll just go to that first. In the group agreement, yeah, we'll be wanting to put into the group agreement the boundaries around safeguarding, so that we want to create an environment where children can discuss things that they're worried about and concerned about, and it's an open environment. But we also need to make it clear to children that if they are, if they disclose something, we think they're being harmed in any way, we'd need to pass that on. So yeah, putting that within the group agreement would be ideal. Yeah, so thinking about those boundaries around physical contact, but also personal information. And, you could do that as a very simple sorting activity, couldn't you? So what sorts of physical contact do I like, don't I like, would I have, wouldn't I have with different people? So you might on the, playground, for example, with your friends, you might give them a hug. Would you hug the teacher or the shopkeeper? So that sort of getting children to think about the different behaviours that they have, and also that obviously links in with consent as well, that just because their friend wants a hug, they don't have to hug back, they don't have to agree to a hug, and we'll come on to that in a moment. And then again with personal information, what do we share? Do we share where we live, the school we go to, if we're communicating online, or if somebody asks us that we don't know? So who do we share that information again, and helping children to understand those boundaries around that. And then we're thinking about how children can communicate their boundaries. So being able to say to someone, actually, no, that's not okay. And that, the skills of doing that. So they might know what a boundary is, or what their boundary is, or what their friend's boundary is, but helping children to understand the skill of being able to communicate that. So how do we say to someone respectfully, no, I don't want to hold your hand, or no, I don't want to play that game? How do we teach children to receive that no as well without feeling rejected? Recognizing that everybody is different and has different boundaries, and it doesn't mean they don't like you, or it's just that people have boundaries and we need to stick with them. And then how to ask for support. And again, that's a skill, isn't it? So they might know who to go to for support, but how? What sort of things do I say to access support? How do I vocalize that to somebody? Any questions as we're going along, just put them in the chat. Yeah, so telling or showing people how we feel about things. And I think that's really important when we think about consent, specifically, sort of that permission seeking and giving, because we can tell not just from what somebody says, but through their body language, can't we, and how they look, and whether they look smiling and happy, or whether actually they're saying yes, but we're looking at their body and their face, and that's not saying yes. So again, that comes to some of the work you do around emotions and how we can tell how somebody is feeling. I think we've talked about that. So not assuming everyone wants to be treated in the same way. I do a quite nice activity where I get the children to sort different types of touch into red, amber and green, and then explore the differences, so what discussion they had in groups. I get them to do it in groups. I usually use that in year 3, get them to do it in groups and explore the discussion that they had in their groups, because actually some people might really like a hug or a holding hands, but others might not. So again, it's about individuals and exploring the sort of grey area that not everyone likes the same things. And then you can explore how, someone shows us that they're feeling uncomfortable. And that's, that's an interesting, there's a lovely book coming out in August. I think it's called Don't Hug Doug. That sounds good. I presume it's about Doug not liking hugs. Is that right, Nicola? Yeah, there's loads of really nice storybooks out there around this kind of thing, and I'm sure there'll be more coming out. And then keeping information private. So again, think about what's private information, what's public information, not sharing personal information online. So again, you don't have to have a separate being safe topic that would fit in with the work you're doing around e-safety. And only talking to the people we choose about some issues. So some people are very, they like to, they're very open. They say, tell everyone everything, but others aren't. And again, it's recognizing that diversity. But again, reminding children that who they can talk to if they're worried about something. And public and private, again, an interesting area to explore with children in terms of times and spaces where we don't want others to see us. So what's a private space? What is a public space? And again, particularly with children with autism or learning disabilities, they might need more work on that public and private behaviour or public and private spaces. And we can keep some information to ourselves. We don't have to tell everybody everything. So again, you could use sorting, or they brainstorm, or what's a public place, what's a private place, when are we private, what sorts of things might we keep private, and who might we keep things private from. So we might tell something to our family, for example, if we're feeling poorly, but we might not tell everybody else. When is it a good idea to tell other people things? So all of that gives a rich area for learning about privacy, and that can lead into thinking about secrets. So do we keep secrets? What is a good secret? What's a bad secret? What do we do if a secret is making us feel worried or uncomfortable? And again, bringing back to that, we can seek advice from a trusted adult, or we can actually support our friends as well to speak to somebody. Does anybody have Childline come in to do sessions? I know they do sessions, don't they, in primary? Anybody have those? No, I guess not for not this year, not this year anyway. But hopefully, in the future they'll be doing those again. But encouraging them to contact Childline if they don't feel they can talk to anybody else, trusted adult in school. Let me just think, we have posters up. Yeah, great. Had them previously to do assemblies in the past. Back in the good old days. You can get access to the resources. Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, I think I've got a link to you can get access to the resources that they use, Joanna. Is that in the assemblies or the pants information? They send you all the bits they use. Okay, great. Great. So rights over our own bodies is the next area. And we've talked about that bit at the top, that recognising that different people, have different needs in terms of touch. Not everybody likes to be hugged, for example. I'm thinking about bodily autonomy, with older students. Now, this is the bit where it says about ensuring children are able to name body parts. So I've seen quite a lot on online networks around, where does that come in? Is that sex education? Is that relationships education? Is it safeguarding? Is it science? But this is where it comes in, is in the relationships section of being safe. So how you go about that, again, might be, might be linked to the resources that you're using, but give some consideration to when you're going to introduce children to scientific names that is a common language for every child in school. And also think about then how staff are using those words. So all staff, so whether that be lunchtime supervisors or staff that don't necessarily do this lesson, make sure we're reinforcing the use of those scientific words in school. What are the lines between encouraging talk about what's private and secret and not wanting whole class disclosures? I guess we remind children of how they seek support. And, you know, if you've got mechanisms within your class for them either sort of writing their ideas down in a book or their thoughts down in a book, or you've got worry monsters, we remind them, and you could do that at the start of a lesson as well. So if anyone's got something that they feel worried about, I know it's slightly more challenging with younger children that just want to tell you everything. But, you know, if anyone's got any worries, I'm available at this time after the lesson. Or you might want to have a quiet word with me. So we kind of build that in. But I guess if they, you know, if they come out with something, we need to manage that, which is why it's good to prepare your pastoral safeguarding staff beforehand that might happen. Because I guess, you know, if it comes out, a disclosure is a good thing, isn't it? Because we can then follow it up. And this type of work is likely to bring about disclosures as children recognise that some things aren't appropriate. So I guess the other thing, Sarah, to think about is your distancing technique. So when we're working around these issues, we are trying to distance it from the children's individual experience, but obviously we want them to, you know, still be thinking, how does this relate to me? But we're talking about, oh, you know, this, if we're using this puppet's telling me that, you know, the babysitter touched their hair or whatever it might be. How do they, you know, what would they do about that? And we're reminding children of what they would do if that happened to them by seeking support in school. Okay, and again, the names of body parts, so the names that you use, again, you might want to think about, you know, using sort of a couple of terms, 2 or 3 terms in early years, and then building up as we're talking more about puberty changes, introducing more of the body parts. So you might use penis and vulva, penis and testicles and vulva with the very young children, and then build in more words later on. Okay, any other questions on that part? No? Okay. So this kind of covers things that we've already mentioned, so that we are able to say no, we can choose physical contact and change our mind about physical contact. So just because somebody held your hand yesterday, they don't have to today. And that's the sort of basics of permission seeking and giving, or consent as it would be termed later on. Great, thanks, Joanna. Explain that an adult should never make a child feel uncomfortable. So touching them inappropriately in a way that they do not agree to, or asking them to share or look at inappropriate images. Again, you know, you could build this into work around healthy relationships. So would someone that you're in a friendship with, or that you know, like a music tutor or something like that, would they touch you in a place that is inappropriate or without your permission? So we can use scenarios to help children to understand what these might look like. And then ensuring that children know where they can go for support, and that they can ask trusted adults, or they can phone Childline if they don't feel able to speak to an adult within their close circle. They have the right to withdraw permission from adults or other young people who make them feel uncomfortable or unsafe, and speak to a trusted adult. So again, you can see how, you know, this all links in with the healthy relationship side and being able to access the support. Teach children so how that they have a right to feel safe, but also what it feels like to be safe. You know, how do we know that we're being cared for? How can we tell that someone has our best interests at heart? How do we know when we're in a healthy relationship? What feels good for us around touch? And then it's easier then to explore what isn't, you know, what doesn't feel safe? How does my body feel then when, you know, I don't like that touch? You know, how am I feeling inside, and what would I do about that? Okay, and, you know, broaden that to think not just about touch, but other types of behaviour. So being shouted at, someone using bad words. So we're exploring that sort of, you know, the broad ways in which people might abuse others, not just with touch. And I often think that's quite a useful one, you know, because some behaviours in relationships could be good or bad depending on the context. So, you know, with older children, we can look at the context of some of that behaviour. So shouting, you know, you might be shouting someone to come down for their tea, for example. If you're shouting hurtful words at them, that's very different. If you are pushing someone because there's an immediate danger, that, you know, is a positive thing. Whereas if you're pushing them because you're angry with them, that is a negative thing. So, you know, exploring the complexity in terms of behaviour, that, you know, it's not just good and bad behaviours, it's about the context that those behaviours happen in. Okay, asking for help and support is the next one. So the know how to ask for advice or help for themselves or others. Excuse me, and keep trying until they're heard. So again, you know, embedding the learning from respectful relationships, knowing the signs that something is wrong, and know when they need to get support. So again, all things that we could, you know, perhaps use scenarios or stories for. At what point does somebody in this scenario or this story need to get support, and where would they go? So yeah, if somebody's touching them inappropriately, if they're worried or upset, online or in person. And we need to be thinking about, when we talk about healthy relationships, that, you know, it is online and in person, the same things apply. And explaining that there are laws around abuse, and that it's important to report concerns. And I guess, again, that sort of worry that children might have, that if they tell somebody, that actually, you know, they might get into trouble, or someone might think they're rude or wrong, or, you know, so really helping children to understand that if they, you know, if it's important to them, if they feel worried, scared, that they can tell somebody and seek support. Okay, I've just been through that. So, you know, they're not telling tales. And again, you could use scenarios for that, couldn't you? You know, is this appropriate to get support for, isn't it? So thinking about different scenarios. When can we sort things out ourselves, and when do we need to involve somebody else? We talked about this at the beginning. So what do we say? What are the words that we say? You might want to do some role play around that. You know, you as a teacher could role play, you know, with a puppet or with a child in role. What might happen if they ask for support, and what sort of words that they can use. And again, reminding children who in school they can talk to, and hopefully that would be any member of staff that would be able to help them, but they can choose who they feel most comfortable with. And then again, thinking about, you know, the different things that children might say, and how they feel at different points. So this person makes me feel sad, embarrassed, and that links in with your work around feelings, encouraging that, you know, the children understand the different feelings that they might have. So that's ensuring that children have the vocabulary to accurately report inappropriate touching or abuse. I'm sure quite a lot of you would have already done work around, you know, identifying those people who can give support. We talked about the, you know, the helping hand or the circles. There's probably other things that you use to do that, but making that, you know, you might feel, oh, we've done that in this year, we don't need to do it again, but I think it's a really important part every year, children being reminded of who are those support networks. Okay, so at secondary level, the sort of work that you've been doing at primary leads into more in-depth content, obviously at secondary. But you can see how the work that you do to build the foundations for this is really important. Now, it does say that if there's a need in your community or with your pupils, you can cover some aspects of secondary content. So, for example, if you are covering sex education in year 6, then you would want to include something around sexual consent within that. Not everybody will be covering that, but you know, if you are, then you know you could build that in. For in some areas, depending on need, you might want to do some work around FGM within primary. It's not within the primary curriculum, but if it's needed within your community, then you know, put some work in. Generally, the work at primary around FGM is again reinforcing the you know, what parts of the body are private and who they would go to if anybody touched them or hurt them in a way you know, that they felt harmed or uncomfortable with. Again, you know, you might touch on grooming, harassment. It's all to do with the needs of your pupils. So from your pupil voice work, from your knowledge of the local community, what issues are coming up for you, you know, you might want to bring in some of that secondary content. So I've just noted down some ideas, activity ideas, and I think I've probably touched on quite a few of these, but it's really simple things. I mean, some of you may have a scheme and, you know, it might be covered within there, but there's some very simple things that you could do activity-wise. So brainstorms, what makes a good friend? How do people in families care for one another? Who do we have relationships with? And you could lead on, you know, well, who are those are our trusted adults? Card sorting, so good, bad touch, public and private areas, okay, not okay behaviours in friendships, you know, what responsibilities we have, what rights come with those responsibilities. Puppets, I quite often use puppets for the safe, unsafe touch. So I'll have a puppet come in, introduce them to the children, and then the puppet whispers something to me and we explore what the problem is. And then the children give some advice. So it's a way of building in some of those safety messages. Friendship problems, again, you could explore boundaries around touch. You know, being able to say no to a friend. And, you know, how to ask for help as well. You could use puppets. Stories, a rich area for discussion. You know, most stories have relationships at their heart, don't they? So there are books as well around private body parts and keeping safe, friendships and families, creating posters or leaflets, so how to stay safe online. So after you've done some work, this might be a way of assessing that, how to be a good friend, who can help. Labelling, so when we're thinking about private body parts, you could do labelling, you know, boy parts, girl parts, or parts for girl bodies, boy bodies, safe and unsafe touch, and public or private behaviours. You could use the dolls, you know, the sort of anatomically correct dolls to look at body parts. You could use diagrams. You could use clothed bodies if the naked images would be a problem within your community. It's just about ensuring children have that common language within class. And I'm sure most of you will be familiar, but the NSPCC Pants resources are all free. There's videos, there's Pantosaurus. It's great fun singing that as a class, sticks in your head all day and longer. So yeah, really good resources, and they have parent materials that can be shared as well, because I know that sometimes the naming of the body parts can be an anxiety for parents, but it's about really ensuring that we inform parents why we need to have a common language in school. Okay, and then just some bits of good practice around covering this topic. So making sure you adapt the content to suit the needs of your pupils and an age when it's going to be best received, both age and developmentally appropriate. And not, as I say, going in for the sort of, we're going to do a whole chunk of 6 weeks on this, but building it in to other topics so that children don't get overwhelmed. You could build some of that work around boundaries into our discussion around healthy friendships, can't you? How we behave in friendships. Ensure that your policies are all connected. So policies on bullying and safeguarding. That's great, Matalan. Matalan was selling the pants dinosaur. We have one in each class. Brilliant. Yes, Rachel, I'll send the PowerPoint will be sent out. Yeah, great. That kind of visual is brilliant. Have they still got them, Anna? Did you get those recently? Oh, she's just with a baby. She's typing. And yeah, oh great. So everybody when the shop's open or online, get to Matalan and get your dinosaurs. That's brilliant, isn't it? A really way of embedding it. And yeah, ensure language and advice is sensitive. So we don't want to stigmatize survivors. We always want to, really put the emphasis that actually it's people who abuse that have the problem. It's not, the victims or survivors. And we don't want to stigmatize them. I know that some of the early internet safety videos were quite, they did seem to be quite, putting the blame on the victim. You did this, therefore this happened, rather than actually it's the person who shared that picture or whatever that was to blame. Thinking about that we all have a part to play in challenging abusive behaviour, and that again links to your whole school ethos, doesn't it, and all your other policies around behaviour, etc., that actually we can all make a difference to this. It's not just one person, it's everybody. We can all challenge, or we can do the right thing. And then also, that thinking about the strength that it takes to seek support, and how difficult it must be for people that have experienced abuse. And then, yeah, not just about it being against the law, but that it's wrong in itself because it violates human rights. And this is just, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, that children will often show things, this from your work, but will often show things in a non-verbal way. So when we're teaching, just keeping an eye on children, and if a child is behaving differently than we would normally expect, then that might signify something that needs following up. And any specialist services, so NSPCC, Childline, etc., just making sure that they are in line with what you're delivering. So make sure you know what they're going to deliver. How does that fit in with your curriculum? How does it enhance it? And make sure you work on recommendations. So obviously, NSPCC is I can't think of the word, but you know, it's an established organisation, isn't it, that's been working for a long time and does research and all of that kind of thing. So we know they're a reputable organisation, but just kind of consider if there are local organisations that you use, that you're going on recommendations, but and that they're working within your policy, and you know what they're going to be delivering. And it also sort of says that teachers can stop input that's not appropriate. I know in the area where I work, we have a service that does work in schools around healthy relationships and domestic abuse, and they've been going for a long time, and it's a full 6-week programme that they deliver. But just, you know, keep in mind that you have the power, if you like. You choose organisations that meet the needs that you want them to, and really scrutinise those. Okay, so that's the end of my content. What I'd like to do is very quickly just put you into some breakout rooms, just for you to reflect on what you've heard and think about how that fits with your curriculum. I mean, is this, you know, are you thinking, yes, we do all that, brilliant? Or are there areas where you're going to need to have another look, or, you know, seek out some resources? So just quickly, for 5 minutes, I shall put you into some breakout rooms to have a little chat. How many have I got? 23. Let's go for 6. Okay, so you should just get a notification to join the room, and then I'll bring you back after 5 minutes. Off you go. Hello.
So I can hear you, Catherine, but I can't hear Fiona.
Oh, no, I can't hear Fiona. Oh, have you been in a room speaking to yourself, Sharon?
No, no. We tried to chat to each other as well, and couldn't see each other's chat either.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I'm not sure. Have you got? Must be something to do with your speakers, Fiona. I'm sure you've worked that out, but I'm not sure what. I don't know what to advise. Have you found that before, Fiona, or have you had no? Oh, that's a shame. Okay, so just quickly then, call on group 1, Kerry. Is Kerry there?
Yeah, hi.
Kerry. And so just a summary then of the discussion in your group.
We was just saying about how our workplace does things and the schemes and programmes they follow. And we had a little discussion about parents just having that clarity of what we will be covering, and saying sometimes they assume certain things and they just want that knowledge and that understanding that, you know, this will be happening, and that reassurance really. But
Yeah.
saying about sending letters out, and we can't have the meetings we used to do in the hall. So I know at my school we've done questionnaires to gain, you know, the views of parents, and just having that communication really about what's going to be covered.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I know that this is an area where traditionally parents have, you know, particularly with the naming of body parts, have had, some parents have had issues, or, you know, and I think usually it is around misunderstanding or, you know, lack of information about the purpose of that, and why and how it's going to be covered. And I think, you know, some of it is around also explaining to children that these are not words that generally as a society we like to be shouted out in, you know, Tesco's or whatever. So it's about how they use that language as well is important. Group 2, Rachel, did you have anything to add? Is Rachel there?
Rachel was unable to unmute, so we didn't really have a discussion, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That happened in another group as well. Anna in room 3, anything to add? Is Anna's? Oh, Anna put a note in there.
Sorry, it's me pressing all the wrong buttons. Yeah, we were talking about how in general we felt that people felt that they covered it quite well. Then we I mistakenly took us off on a tangent, just sort of talking about how sometimes male staff members find some of the inappropriate touch things and the naming body parts, I can't think of the right phrase, but more difficult to teach with female pupils.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Yeah, yeah, and I guess part of that is around our support for staff as well, and thinking about, you know, how do we support those staff that might feel less comfortable? What is that about? You know, how can we help them? Can we do team teaching, etc. Well, I hope that's been useful. If you've got any other thoughts or concerns or want any more support, just send me an email. I'll get the slides sent out. Joe has sent the contact there for the NSPCC and says that if you email that person, you can get the Speak Out, Stay Safe film and assemblies and pre-online assembly pack. So there's lots of stuff that you can get if you email the NSPCC contact. So thank you for that, Joe. And all of the, if you haven't been to any of the other briefings, you can access all of the DFE modules. You may have seen those already, but I've put a link on the slides to the portal, the Lead Equate portal, where I've put them all in as well. So, you know, do have a look there. And like I say, any questions after, please just drop me an email. Thank you all very much. There we go, dead on 2. Lovely to see you all, and enjoy the sunshine if you get an opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, Anna and baby.